But first, today the Prime Minister boldly announced that if Australia develops the COVID-19 vaccine, that we'd share it with the world. And so we should. But as the country falls deeper into debt, as jobless numbers soar and an entire state exists in a state of disaster, it's time to ask our elected officials, what is the long-term strategy? How is Australia going to cope if there is no vaccine in the next 12 months or the next 2 years? It is foolhardy in the extreme to assume that a COVID-19 vaccine is certain and imminent, given a successful vaccine has never been developed for any coronavirus. Even the influenza vaccine is only effective 40 to 60% of the time, and some flu seasons the success rate has been as low as 19%. That's according to the Centre for Disease Control and Protection. Scientists have tried and failed since the 1950s to develop a vaccine or cure for the common cold. And on Monday, the WHO chief warned that there may never be a silver bullet for COVID-19. So the question is, if an effective vaccine isn't developed and quickly, what will Australia do? Do Scott Morrison and the National Cabinet have a plan B? And at what point will they share that pertinent information with the rest of us? This is what the Prime Minister said today in response to that question.
I want to encourage people. We won't know when a vaccine will come, but as Professor Kelly will tell you, there's never been a global effort like this. And there are some positive signs there that we can be hopeful about. Australia is positioning itself well to take advantage and be in a position to be able to manufacture and supply vaccines should they be developed.
The rest of the world is adapting, and whether they planned it or not, they're moving slowly towards herd immunity and reopening their societies, while Australia has adopted something resembling an elimination strategy, but without explicitly saying so. If elimination is the goal, then without a vaccine or herd immunity, Australia, along with New Zealand, would have to remain closed to the rest of the world indefinitely to ensure the virus does not re-emerge. That would be disastrous on a number of fronts, with the human, social and economic cost outstripping anything we've seen thus far. There is a better way, as Taiwan has shown. With a careful, targeted approach, you can avoid COVID-19 deaths and limit the damage to the economy. It feels that despite the daily press conferences during this pandemic, the public has been largely treated like mushrooms, kept in the dark and fed crap. Where is the modelling behind the decisions? What is the medium and long-term strategy? And in the case of Victoria, where is the accountability for the catastrophic decisions that have plunged this state into a state of disaster? At today's press conference, Dan Andrews was asked about the enormous failures in Victoria's coronavirus response and Treasurer Josh Frydenberg's criticism. Here was his response.
Treasurer Josh Frydenberg today became quite emotional about what's happening in Victoria and said this all could have been avoided. What do you say to that?
Oh, well, this is a wildly infectious virus. And there are second waves in countries right around the world.
Yes, Premier, there are second waves elsewhere, but nowhere else in Australia, which has been closed off to the rest of the world for months. Every other state and territory leader managed to do the right thing. Only Victoria botched the response. Victoria has had more coronavirus cases and deaths than every other state and territory combined. This isn't down to bad luck. It's due purely to gross incompetence. We are 5 months into this pandemic and the Victorian response remains hopelessly inadequate. The contact tracing program is a shambolic mess, with many of those exposed to the virus not contacted for days, sometimes over a week. And there are now concerns from senior health officials that Victorian authorities are withholding vital data. Dan Andrews says the buck stops with him, but he needs to articulate precisely what that means. Premier, will you step down if it's determined that Victoria's second wave was caused by your decisions? Because that's what taking responsibility looks like in the real world.